Hello everybody and welcome to another Wheel of Time video here on the channel. Today I am sitting down with Matt Hatch from the Dusty Wheel and we are going to be discussing what should and should not be cut or changed or added to the Wheel of Time show. No, despite what people say online sometimes, we have no control over that. We would sure like to, but now I get to transition smoothly into asking Matt, what would you change for the Wheel of Time show, or do you not want to see changed?
Great question. And thanks for having me, Daniel.
Of course.
Let's see. What do you not change? You gotta have a creator. You gotta have a dark one, and as Varen says, you gotta have a Tel'aran'rhiod. Look, those are the three things. If you pull one of those pegs out of the stool, then something falls down. It's not the Wheel of Time. So I feel like you need all the three constants that she considers to be important. So yeah, to me, that's one of the ones I hope that the writers and Rafe are like, I hope when Rafe says that's the spine and that's the heart of this.
Okay.
Those are part of those things. It would really be weird to not have a World of Dreams. I don't know. Can you see a Wheel of Time TV series without a World of Dreams?
No, I cannot. Now, we previously talked on this topic a bit, is what I will say, and with the mention of portal stones was brought up. And, I know that we both kind of feel that we like portal stones, right? They add a lot of character and distinction for the Wheel of Time, but they are definitely easier to remove than the World of Dreams. So I want to know, though, would you simply try and cut as many plot lines with portal stones if you had to remove that element, or would you just somehow try and morph it into working with Tel'aran'rhiod?
Yeah, I think you could get away with using the ways potentially. If you needed some fast travel and you got to keep one of those mechanisms. I'd like to see them keep either the ways or portal stones. I'd love them both. I want them both, but I feel like because you don't want to bring traveling in too quickly, like that's just so powerful that changes the whole dimension. Like, why are they just if they have traveling, why are they just walking to the eye of the world? So I feel like you got to keep ways or you got to keep portal stones. And of those two, I don't know, man, that's tough. I'm gonna pick the ways. I hate that you're making me choose this. So you have to choose between that, the ways or portal stone.
The ways, hands down. There's so much character and personality to the ways. It's not even a competition for me. They're creepy. They bring in those horror vibes for Wheel of Time, and I'm big on the horror vibes for Wheel of Time. I think they should even be played up for the show. So yeah, 1000% keep the ways. And it's one of the few elements I would say crank it up. It's like the ways, Logain, Taim, and more White Tower. Those are like the four things where I'm like, play it up. Don't cut down. Give me more. And the Aiel as a whole.
Well, you have the ways. Would you also say that about like Shadar Logoth and Fain? Do you want them to amp him up and amp up what his plot line really is and see more of him on screen?
Okay, let's get into this. Shadar Logoth is a hell yes for me. It's basically like a mini Stephen King setting within the Wheel of Time, right? This haunted, spooky city that's so evil won't touch. Like that's amazing. I love it. And this gives us one of Matt's best moments where it's, don't touch anything. I'm taking this knife. Spoiler warning, by the way, for the Wheel of Time. So I think, yes, play up the ways. I would have originally said, controversial opinion, you can remove Fain if you really want to. But we know they're not. He's going to be there. So now you have to shift his storyline for me. You got to morph it. You got to make it either more closely tied to Matt and or Rand or something. Because honestly, in the books, with his resolution, in hindsight, most of the time I'm following Fain, I'm kind of just going, why am I here? And so it's one of the few like real flaws of the series. And so now I'm pretty big on, for things to change, you got to change Fain.
Yeah, I'd love for them to give him just like Rafe talks about Logain. I'd love for him to also say the same things about Pat and Fain. He hasn't said those, so if you're listening, Rafe, you can make that tweet anytime. Just tweet us over at the Dusty Wheel. Let us know you're going to amp up Pat and Fain any day now. I don't know. Yeah, Fain to me is an obvious target for them to amp up, and they're keeping him at least in season 1. So yeah, I feel like if they're going to keep him, then do something interesting with him. Don't just. And I think he has a great arc for the first 2 books anyway. So I don't feel like they have to do too much there.
Oh, it's the later books. Yeah.
That aspect to me, I really like, which is that we know he's there. Is there anyone for you we don't know they're there, and you're concerned, or you kind of like, I hope they never show up? Is there like a character that maybe you would consider kind of top tier that you hope they'd never put in, or do you, or you they all have to be there?
This is going to be painful for me to say because she's one of my favorite characters. I love her. But from a narrative, she does not do much, and that's Aviendha. I love Aviendha. I've made it clear she's my favorite of the love square. But what does she do that can't be solved by someone else very easily?
Damn it.
Pretty much.
No, I love Aviendha.
I do too. I think she is, personality-wise, one of the most fun characters to act as an actor. They could definitely change her slightly to make her more integral to the story. Maybe pick up someone else's that they cut. But as it stands raw from the books, she kind of just is alongside Rand, and they could easily have another character do that at the beginning, and then she switches to being Elaine's buddy and Egwene's buddy. She's the buddy character, and she's not even ever the only buddy character.
So are you a hope they cut?
No, I don't, but I could see it. If I had to say someone I hope they cut, it cut down to Forsaken. There's just too many people, and for an audience to memorize this many villains, some of which die off screen or don't really play a major role for a while, like it's just, you can cut them down, and narratively it'll smooth it out for me quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that, but it seems likely. What do you mean by that? You're right. I love the whole 13 aspect to it. I love the different, they have so much character, and I love each one. Like Asmodean is just, he's so unique, and I want them to keep him. But I can see them being a target for them to consolidate. So that being said, are there any Forsaken you think that just can be dropped immediately? Like, who were your top three that you would just say, done? We don't.
Well, I want to clarify, not drop, combine. So I want to just take them and weave them in with others. Like, I think Taim, make him Demon Dread, maybe. I know that's really like a thing that people are talking about right now, but I could see it paying off to actually have him be Demon Dread. In that sense, especially because Demon Dread is, he just kind of shows up at the ending like, ba-da. And it's a little, I think that twist could really work in the show if they wanted to do it. But yeah, a few of the more minor ones, I think you could just swap. I would say the bottom four in terms of page count, just put them together. I mean, both of the guys, who are the people that show up at Eye of the World at the very end? It's
Balthamel and Agenor.
What? Just stop it. Just make it one guy. Just make it one guy, and then you're fine. Because I also find having two Forsaken there who are so easily handled, that downplays Forsaken for the rest of the series. It sets a tone of like, Moraine can one-shot one, and then the other one gets killed by a farm boy on accident.
Okay, but but you're bringing up a really important piece of this. That has always annoyed me, just how inefficient the Forsaken are, especially right at the beginning. I mean, Ishamael does not need to fight Rand 3 times. That just doesn't have to happen. Maybe he doesn't. Ishamael is only in the dreams, and he doesn't even show up at the end of the first season. I'd be okay with that. Like, give us Agenor or something, and they fight Agenor, and they give us Tarwin's Gap. Totally fine with that. You get a feel for what the Forsaken are. You still have this overarching baddie that is there, and you're kind of like wondering what he's up to. And then give us one single really cool clash between Ishamael and Rand. Take Ishamael out. Do you want us to, that's a great, you bring up an interesting piece of this, which is tone. Do you want to see them go to Thakandar, early on? Do you want to get behind the scenes in the Shadows, plans and armies? I mean, you see this happen in Lord of the Rings a bunch. Do you want the Wheel of Time version of that? Because Jordan doesn't really take us behind the scenes too much.
People are going to blast me. I want it so bad. I really do. I think it'd be such a cool element to the show to have, and I would enjoy it immensely. But it would be a betrayal to the text, and it's something we don't necessarily have time for. But I think the benefits would be extraordinary because, writing about the Shadow in the books, there's faster diminishing returns there for me than showing it in the show, because there's going to be so much more you can do visually and thematically with the music and stuff to really sell the Shadow in that sense. And the Wheel of Time does struggle, as we said, from inefficient Forsaken, which we can make a little bit better by combining them, and a few other elements that if we just get deeper into the Shadow, you can reduce those flaws. And I really am looking for that.
Yeah, I think that would help this whole, it's not Keystone Cops narrative that we get with the Forsaken sometimes. I think seeing some of that, their plans happening, get behind the scenes a little bit more, you wouldn't feel so much like, oh, great, he's going to show up and they're going to beat him. They're not always in the losing end of the stick, if you will, on the kind of on the plot. So yeah, I like that. But you mentioned this a couple times. You've also brought up you like the horror element and you want to see them amp it up. So tonally, is that kind of where you want to see Wadam Prime go? Do you want the
You're reversing a question I asked you last time. I see what you're doing here. He did a dirty thing, but I like it. So there's the question in Wheel of Time of whether the show should fade to black like Jordan does. Again and again, in his darkest moments, Jordan decides instead to fade to black and let the reader imagine it. In today's day and age, if we're going to build that audience, if we're going to sell this show, I really do believe we should reduce how much we fade to black. Now, I've made the point before, and I'll make it again, that we have this weird doublethink in our society where violence is okay to show, nudity's not. So I predict what we're going to see is there's going to be less nudity than in the books, but more violence, which, however that's going to bug you, is it's going to bug you. I've just kind of accepted it. I think that's one of the safest bets I have for the whole show. I think it will be darker in the violence sense, but it'll have less nudity. Jordan liked having tits out. I don't know what else to say to y'all. But in terms of the tone, though, now I'm going to steal a point you made because you stole my question. I'm throwing it back at you. The Wheel of Time has still this source, this heart to it. From beginning to end. It's never hopeless. It's never dreary. It's never miserable. And they need to walk a very fine line there of upping the violence, upping the consequences, but not ever going full season 5, I think, of Game of Thrones where they burn a girl alive at the stake. Like, not go there. So it's going to be difficult, but I think they'll find it just fine. And they certainly have the lore people involved to understand how not to lose the soul of the show in that sense.
Yeah, that's one of those things, right? Like, that's what people love about the Wheel of Time, right? There's a thread there. I mean, I enjoy the Game of Thrones books. I enjoy other, I enjoy some, Dark Tower from Stephen King, but I don't want the Wheel of Time to become the Dark Tower. Like, I don't want the Wheel of Time to become Game of Thrones. Like, it has to be unique. And I think that tone is important. While, like you said, still giving us more of the dark than we see in the books. Not just have it be talked about, right? We have to see some of this. So I think they can manage it. I'd be surprised if they don't. I would be disappointed. I think that is one of those, I would be really disappointed if it just, they lost that, right? Losing that aspect to it would just kind of give it more of that Game of Thrones feel. And I don't think I don't want that as a fan.
That's fair. No, okay, but as a fan, I'm going to make you betray now. What specific plot line would you pull? If you have to pull one's plot line and say this one's not necessary, it doesn't serve a purpose, major B-level plot line, what are you cutting?
Shoot.
Yeah, I was letting you go to like a D-level, like, oh, this cabbage guy. No.
Damn it. Look, I have not gone back and studied this to know all the repercussions. But I think you can get out some of that, the kin, Bowl of Winds, I think you can drop that whole thing. I just think they can streamline that piece. I mean, I was going to say Val and Luca's whole circus piece, but that's not I don't think that's big enough. But I think dropping the kin, dropping Bowl of Winds search, the whole book where Matt's missing, I feel like you can take out some of that aspect and still have the Wheel of Time narrative and get us to the last battle, and it won't feel empty, like you lost a big piece. Not that it's unnecessary, right? It's this whole idea of like 7,000 plots, right? The Wheel of Time is that much bigger than Game of Thrones, and we got 8 seasons on HBO. We're not getting 14 seasons of the Wheel of Time. It's just not happening. So,
I mean, we could. No.
Are you going on record like we're 14 seasons? I mean, yeah. I'm not saying they couldn't do 14 seasons of the Wheel of Time. I just have a hard time believing that Amazon is going to give us like a book per season. That feels. In fact, Rafe said, right? He said something about like the books like 7 to 10, I think, or somewhere in that. He's like, yeah, there's going to be some consolidation, of plots here.
Which I would be more worried if he said there wasn't that, because that means he's setting an unrealistic, unmeetable expectation. I think we'll be very fortunate as fans if we get 10 seasons. And I will be happy with that number. 10 seasons, I will be like, that's awesome. Because HBO didn't want to end Game of Thrones, and the actors were still on board. It was the showrunners that went, bleh, and kind of just like hopped out. So they could have done a 9. So I think it's realistic to have a fantasy show that does 10 seasons. You just have to be, you have to have a bunch of very, very committed people, which so far we haven't seen anybody who's like, actually, I'm gonna go over here.
That's going to be interesting. You're trying to keep the Emmett Fielders, for 10 years of production and 10 seasons. And that's a year per season, right? So,
I'm sure they could shoot. They can shoot, 2 seasons in 1 year if they scheduled out right, I'm sure.
Because you'd want to, right? Like the books take place over, 3 to 4 years or something like that. Maybe I'm overestimating. Maybe it's like 3. I guess it's not that big of a deal. It would only be if actors wanted to walk away. I mean, that would be really strange, right? Like Yosha is just like, I don't want to do this anymore. We're 7 seasons in, and he's like, I'm good. That plot aspect, and I want to ask you that same question, right? Jordan has so many plots and so many characters. Is there one that stands out to you that's kind of first tier that you would drop at this point? Or not would, that you could see them drop and still make it, the Wheel of Time and get to the end?
Well, you said the circus wasn't substantial enough, so I was gonna go there, but okay, fine. I would restructure Perrin's storyline past about book 5 pretty substantially and streamline it and make him more involved, actually, but use him as a way to streamline a lot of other plots that are kind of just more wayside. It would be a really foundational change, but I think it's one the show needs, because Perrin, one, is just gone for a book, and then he shows up and he kind of meanders, and then he sits in place, and then you can condense 3 books from him to 5 episodes, essentially. And then from there, I would use that time with him to essentially be like an aggregator of things that need to be swept up, and just use him in that sense. And that way, this character who kind of sits for a while could still be very actionable and have a lot of agency, along with Fail and the Two Rivers people with him and everything. I would really enjoy that, I think, actually. And it would solve a lot of the problems you see some of the fans have with Perrin as well.
Well, as soon as you said Perrin, I was like, wow, is he about to recommend we somehow change the Two Rivers
No.
plot sequence? So.
No. That's one of the best plots. That is Perrin's golden hour, and we're going to not take that away from him.
I feel like Matrim is the same thing. I feel like a lot of these characters have these, they're just hanging out, living their lives for, days, weeks, months, and then we get back to them, and they're, I feel like there's that aspect that they will actually purposely get rid of, right? They're going to want this to be this entertaining, always constantly moving, narrative. So I think they will consider that. And I think that's when Rafe says that, whatever, the middle books, maybe he said 7 to 10. I need to go back and find that quote, but I think that is what he means is, yeah, we're going to make it so you don't get bored with Perrin and you don't get bored with any of our main characters. You're going to want to see them continually hitting, like even the whole Sitters plot with the split tower. I feel like that one meanders forever, and I feel like that can be handled much quicker than they do. I still want to see it, but I feel like it can just be halved, and we get to the point of that plot much sooner than happens in the books.
So I agree, and simultaneously have things that need to be played up in my mind that they're not weaknesses in the Wheel of Time for not having a stronger part, but I think the Wheel of Time would just benefit from them being more prevalent. More time with the Aiel, I'm down for. Logain is a popular character. Rafe says he likes him. I'm all for that. I would like Taim amped up as well. I love his dynamic with Rand. I want more time with the Shadow. So what is your equivalent for that? What are things you would like to see played up, enhanced, shown more on the screen directly? We've talked about what we want to cut because we're horrible Wheel of Time fans. So what do you want to see that you think could only be stronger? We'd have a great return on investment for turning the knobs on those elements.
We've talked about this idea of Robert Jordan writes friendships, mentorships pretty well. Like I like those, but to me, they need to spend more time on the more intimate relationships. Like I want to believe these people actually like each other. It's not just like, oh, look, I saw that person. Cool. We're in a relationship and we never talk to each other. And then that aspect of like, this comes out of nowhere and he goes nowhere with it. I want to see Amazon take time and build real intimate relationships and believable ones. It doesn't have to be a ton of time, but I think the way that they write them and the way that they treat them, they can give them more precedent in the narrative than I think happens in the books. And that's one of those things that everyone knows. Well, not everyone, but most fans I talk to are like, yeah, I they need to improve their relationships. And that's where I'm hoping they spend that time. I mean, there's lots of other things. Black Tower would be really cool, but I really want to see believable, intimate relationships in this series.
And I think something we both agreed on before was keeping the friendships as prevalent and strong as fleshed out. I mean, the Mansfield Five all have such clear, strong relationships with each other. Their relationships, their dynamics grow and evolve. You know, you can spend so much time talking about how Nynaeve feels about Moraine and how Rand and Perrin's friendship doesn't recover, and yet Rand and Mat still remain these kind of playful friends that bring out the youth in each other. So there's just, I want to keep all of that as strong as it is. The one intimate relationship you're talking about, I think, doesn't need improvement is Nynaeve and Lan. I actually find them to be perfectly evolved by Jordan. But yeah, there is a lot of just, they're hot, I'm in love.
Right. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the world. It does. But that's not interesting, like, to me. It's like, I want compelling relationships, and they exist in the friendship side. Like you said, Nynaeve and Lan. I even think that they could play that up a bit more than Jordan does. I think Jordan does a good job with it. I just think it could be played up a bit more. We could pay more attention to it. Maybe visually there's going to be more cues to us. And I think that that's going to help them a lot, right? We're going to see these things happen. They don't have to do a ton with it, but the visual cues that you can get of how people treat other people will make a huge difference. But you just don't get that as much in the books.
No, you don't. Absolutely don't.
I mean, so speaking of that, I'm kind of curious then. I sounds like Rafe intends to change that Rand relationship a little bit with 3. I don't know. I'm trying to remember the quote that he had out there when it talks about, Elaine, Min and Aviendha and Rand. Do you agree with this idea? Should that relationship change for the Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime? Is this it? Am I holding your feet to a fire you don't want to?
No, it's a very interesting topic, and it's one that people either view as, hey, it's a progressive polyamorous relationship, and that's fine because people can be in those kinds of relationships. I mean, I had friends that are in those kinds of relationships, and I don't judge them at all. Or some people see it as a callback to a time when there's this, the guy gets every girl, it's wish fulfillment. I think the scene where the women sit Rand down and go, "You're not in charge of this relationship, we are, and you have no agency here," kind of undoes the wish fulfillment argument a bit. But I could see how the wanting to avoid a controversy could allow them to pull it back, maybe make Elaine not into him or anything, or maybe just make it like clearly they just hooked up, they're not in love, it was just a one-time thing. Instance, which that's allowed too. I don't judge you. Do what you want to do with your willies. But it's I think they could shift it, and it wouldn't. Frankly, a lot of people have a lot of emotions on this. It wouldn't bother me much one way or the other. I think Jordan did a good job not making it just some shallow wish fulfillment, because he made it so the women literally controlled the relationship, who he saw and everything. But at the same time, I'm not super attached to it. And if you're going to choose one for him to stay with, it's obviously Min. You can't even argue anyone else. It's Min.
I mean, I'm glad we agree on something here, and that's it. If we didn't agree, if we had disagreed about everything else, that is correct. You gave the right answer. I don't care what anyone else watches this video says. That's the relationship they should keep. But to me, honestly, that connection between Aviendha and Min and Elaine, as far as it related to Rand, was kind of irrelevant to me when I read the books. I was like, honestly, I look at Elaine as a pen pal, whatever, friend with benefits anyway. So, and then Aviendha, like you brought this up, what if they did? What if they dropped Aviendha? We keep Min and
I would
Rand.
be so sad.
No, it was terrible. I don't want to drop Aviendha. Understand that. What I'm saying is, or again, they don't have it be an intimate, close relationship with Rand. Maybe they turn that one into a friendship, and that could happen too. And like she becomes his guide into Aiel culture. Damn it, my freaking camera went off. 1 second.
This is where I add one of those bleeps, and it's just like technical difficulties, and then we flash back in and we're fine.
That becomes the thing with Aviendha. She does play that role already, which is a guide to Aiel culture with Rand in many ways. So she can play that role, and they don't need to amp up the intimacy potentially between them. So that's also a possibility. Again, I'm not advocating on it, but it's something they could do if they end up not going with that
No.
those three individuals with Rand.
Because this series was written in the time it was, Robert Jordan liked having not heterosexual couples, but he would just not call them gay. He would say they're pillow friends, or oh, they had a special relationship. I am in the crowd who just says like, no, make that just gay. We don't need to like subvert it. It's 2020. Just make it so they're gay. Who cares?
What's interesting is one of the quotes he said was about that. When someone asked him, I don't have the exact direct quote, but he said something to the effect of, which, whatever, I don't want to get into the politics if it was a cop out or whatever, but he said to the effect, I just wasn't in, they didn't have a point of view that I had, so I didn't write their point of view, but everyone was fine with it culturally. Like it was just part of the culture. Like no one talked about it because it was just there. That's something that when you ask me, like, what do I want to see them do? This should not be the first age, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they have to get right. This should be our future and our past and something else, right? It shouldn't just be a reflection of future and past. It should be its own thing that touches on our future and our past. But it's a culture that's so divergent from our own, right? Like so I don't want to see first age politics. I don't want to see first age, culture in it. I don't want to see first age crap like that. It should be third age. You know what I mean?
You don't want to see a Shamael wearing a red hat going, we're going to make the Westlands great again.
Well, that's, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to see arguments that we're having. Those arguments shouldn't exist. This was something that they had moved beyond, according to Jordan. And that's what really pisses me off to no end, which is people when they say like, well, this is an attitude of, production companies and current social politics, whatever. No, this is Jordan's attitude about it. And so the fact that this culture should feel different from our own, they shouldn't be having the arguments we're having, and cultures clash, right? I want to see that aspect when it comes to the nations. I don't want to see just like, oh, this is like America. And like, if I feel like this is America versus some other nation in the world, I'll be pissed. That's what they better do right.
I understand. And I want the cultural details there on the level of like, I want to see Avienda's curiosity for people in Ebu Dar, or I want to see like the Karianins, manipulation levels and things along those lines. And then I especially want to see like when it comes to, speaking of culture, Tam. I'm going to get hyper specific here. Tam for me shouldn't fit in the Two Rivers in a sense, because he's someone who's been out and seen this wider world. He's experienced it so much. I think they will have really nailed it if I get the same sense from Tam I did in the books, where Tam feels like a worldly man in a small town. And I love that. And I think that's really like something where if you notice that small detail, that'll be something where they did their homework on the level that I can like really love and respect. That's because he's someone who's been out, he's seen these cultures, he's fought in these wars, he knows the greater scheme of things, and now he's in this town where they don't know if we want to do a modern day equivalent, they argue about gravity. Like they're one of those small towns. And I think that'll be a really excellent indicator. It'll be like the canary in the tunnel, what do they call it? Yeah, because that's a detail for that character that's very important.
Yeah, I love that. I wouldn't have thought about that. So I'm glad you brought that up, the idea of Tam. But he shows so much respect, right? And so I love it. Like, he rides that edge of he's aware of that. He has that worldliness, but he doesn't disrespect those people. And so yeah, I hope they do that right. That'd be awesome to be able to detect that piece of it at the beginning. And yeah, I think that will be first episode. It will really let us know that they know that they got it right from a writing perspective, like they understand the world. But there is a part of this that you brought up, this worldliness aspect. I want to see how big this place is, right?
Oh,
Jordan talked about like the big cities like Tarvalon. We're talking like 600, 700,000 people. Andor, he talks about it having 10 million people as part of Andor. It's like, we should feel that. That's one thing I hated. And no, everyone don't hate me for saying this, but Witcher felt so small. Like everything just felt like there were 1,000 people in the world. Like I want to know that there are millions and millions of people, and I want to see big cities. When Rand and company get to Camelin, they talked about seeing extremes of what they had ever seen before, right? And so that's what I want to see. I want to see Camelin that's just full of diversity, and it's huge, right? It's huge. It should not feel like your medieval castle with a town outside of it. It shouldn't feel
because
like
it's
there's
not that.
Yes, exactly. It's not, again. And so that's, yeah, if they do it right, it will feel big and it will feel metropolitan in those big cities, but not metropolitan like New York City, right? Again, it has to be its own version of that. And so, yeah, they have a tough challenge ahead of them. Well, I mean, they've already done it, I guess. They've done 6 episodes, right? So they've already made certain choices, but they have plenty to make ahead. So yeah, that's a piece that would disappoint me. It would disappoint me if it felt small.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, I think, the note we're going to end it on. The Wheel of Time is big, it's huge, it's encompassing, and if you get that wrong, we're going to find you. But thank you so much, Matt, for coming on the show. I appreciate it so much, and I love what you're doing over at the Dusty Wheel.
Thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun over here, but I can't wait to have you back again. We'll be talking. Hopefully, it's sooner rather than later. We talk more Wheel of Time stuff. Anytime.
If you haven't checked out the Dusty Wheel, go ahead and do so. I'll have it linked in the description. Like and subscribe if you've not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace.